Hello, it's Stacey Tuttle with Bridges 527. Got a chance to watch the Boy Called Christmas on Netflix, so I wanted to chat about that for a minute. It is excellent, and I've seen some kind of buzz about it, and I thought rather than doing just reviews about movies in the theaters, this is when so many people are going to be watching at Christmas time. So let me see if I can unpack a few things and make some spiritual connections that will help you transform your family movie nights into something a little more meaningful. So the movie has a lot of like rich themes and meaning to begin with. But I also kind of saw some really cool kind of parallels with the Bible that hopefully, like I said, will be fun to discuss and unpack with depending on what age your kids are, but of different ages. But I will tell you, I actually was impacted as I watched it. I mean, there was a lot of rich, really great things. And some of the Christmas movies, I mean, I love this time of year because there's all kinds of spiritual lessons, right? And so one of the things in this is something that we often see at this time of year is this idea that there's a learning how to see. And so this boy called Christmas ends up in this village. He's looking for the elf village that he's been told exists. But he's in this place and he's like, I don't see it. And he had met an elf, but they're like, we're here. And he's like, I don't see anything. And they were like, okay, you have to learn how to see. And I think, again, it's kind of a common Christmas message. This whole idea of believing in the unseen and like childlike faith and believing what you don't see and then learning to see and all this hope and belief and all this kind of magical kinds of things, right? But I think they did it better in this one than a lot of some of it's a little more trite. This felt like a little more weighty, but there was a learning to see. And I was thinking about when the prophet was there with his sidekick, and he's like, oh my gosh, we're surrounded, and the prophet says, let him see what I see, that there more are those who are with us than those who are against us. And all of a sudden he like opens his eyes and he sees the angel army surrounding, ready to go to battle for them. And so there is a learning to see that happens. And even just Jesus and healing the eyes of the blind, and Paul being blind as he was learning to see in the spiritual realm, he's losing his physical sight, right? And just this, there's such a theme of seeing in the Bible and learning to see the heavenly ways of the Lord, not just the earthly reality that we live in. So I don't know, there was a weightiness to me about the way that was expressed. And so I think there's some cool connections there. I also really liked that so many of the Christmas movies I think can be just all fun and magic and whatever, that's adventure or whatever. But this one was reminded me a little bit of that. Was it Klaus that came out 2 years ago, maybe, also in Netflix, about the mail delivery guy? Both of these have a little bit heavier, weightier. They're not just trite. I think there's a gravity to them and the whole story. So with this one, like one of the quotes in there is that grief is the price we pay for love, and that it's worth it a million times over. And I'm not sure that I 100% agree with like love doesn't always come with grief, or does it? I don't know. I mean, I'd have to really think about, do I fully agree with that? Because I think that's not the way the Lord originally intended it. Of course, the fallen world, there might be more truth to that, but I think there's this reality that Christmas, we want to think of all the magic and the wonder, which it is those things, but there's also hard things, and there's a lot of sadness and a lot of expectation and disappointment. And so in this movie, there's just a lot of like mixed bags of things. And I think they do it in a way where it's not so much negative as it is honest. And I really, again, just really appreciated that this isn't, it's like Old Yeller in some of those old movies where it's like, okay, this is life. And so people die and dogs die and hard things happen, but yet there's good and there's beauty and there's redemption. And this was just one of those. It's not overly simplistic and it's not super trite. I think had a lot of richness to it, but there's a couple of really hard things. Like, he starts to discover his dad made some decisions that he was super disappointed in. He's like, my dad would never, that's not my dad. And all of a sudden it's like, oh gosh, he did. And there's a hurt there, but then he still is able to love and forgive his dad anyways. And there's redemption in his dad, but he has to come face to face too with the fall. And I would say, like, he's kind of like David in that, right? There was beauty in that. He ended well, started well. There was a great big screw up in the middle, but there's love and grace for him, and the Lord forgave and restored him. And Christmas, sorry, the boy called Christmas, did such a great job of dealing with a little bit of grief with who his dad was and some decisions his dad made that he absolutely disagreed with, but yet being so willing to love and forgive his dad and see the good in him. So I think this honesty that people can be mixed bags, that we have to forgive people, that we can see their mistakes but still see the good in them, and they're not just one or the other. And I thought they held that tension really great in this. And then his dad, spoiler alert, his dad dies, and so there's grief involved, but yet there was beauty and hope and restoration that also came out of that. Like, and so he's dealing with, like, I'm gonna have to grieve this, and it's gonna be painful, and there's a lot of honesty about grief in the movie, but then this, like, how do we move forward? And I was thinking, I wrote down something. Somebody said it never goes away, but you can learn to live with it, and you get stronger because of it. And that's the truth. And they were talking about just how truth itself can be simple and clear, but it's not. Sometimes truth is really painful also, and kind of wrestling with these things. So really deep concepts for kids, but things that I think maybe they don't have language for, but so often they're already experiencing those things, and we want to make things so easy and so happy and so fun. But I think sometimes kids need to be able to be honest and wrestle with some things at a deeper level. And I think this provides such a great opportunity for some of those conversations. And again, the Bible, like, gosh, the Bible does the best job of, like, it does not gloss anybody over. The only person that is ideal is Jesus, and everybody else, we see the good, the bad, the ugly all at once. And it does not paint anybody as more than they are or less than they are. And yet you've got and I love in Hebrews, which is about the Hall of Fame, and Hebrews 11, I believe it is, and they're going through all these people, and it's like talking about Lot being this man of character and integrity, and we're like, he wasn't a great, like, all these, Abraham who never doubted, and you're like, didn't he have Ishmael because he kind of doubted or came up with his own plan? Like, the Lord, in some ways, that he shows all the reality of who we are, but then he also remembers our sins against us no more. And he sees the good of us so much that it would seem that he has maybe not been honest about our faults, but the Bible doesn't sugarcoat anything. And yet there is this also redemptive thing where he's like, that's not who they are. This is how I see them. And it's this amazing, beautiful mix of that, and of reality and redemption, and seeing people through the lens of Christ's blood, so that, again, there's no shame, there's no condemnation, nothing is counted against us. And so I think the Bible does such a great job of that. And so this movie in some ways echoes that kind of storytelling to me. Okay, one other thing or two other things. I talked about Elijah. There's a lot, two last things. Hope, the weightiness of hope and the power that it has in community. They talk about it being the most important thing, and how people had hoped in something and got disappointed, and so they never want to have hope again. And just understanding, like, the Bible talks about how hope deferred can make a heart sick, but those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. There's a hope in the Lord that doesn't disappoint, but there's a hope and an expectation that when we get disappointed, just how crushing it is. And so there's that tension in this movie of how do we deal with hope, and what happens when our hope and our expectations have been disappointed, and can we trust again? Can we allow ourselves to have hope, or is hope dangerous? And so at the end, this little boy the little elf, one of the elves, is captured by the humans. Christmas's dad is a part of that, and they're trying to exploit them and the magic that they carry. And so Christmas risks his life to go and rescue them. Now, people don't believe. And so to me, this is like really cool about him being like a Christ figure, because they have no hope in humans. Humans have failed them. The elves think the humans are all just bad and out to exploit them, which is what so many people believe about God, right? That he can't be trusted, and they have this false idea of God. So Christmas goes and rescues at great risk to his own life, and in the process, his dad is killed. But he rescues Kip and brings him back to the village. And so, you have someone who is trying to rule the village through fear, and she is pointing humanity as this, painting this picture that they are evil and they are bad. And then you have Christmas coming back, and she's like, see, they stole him and they killed. It's almost like she almost wants him to die because it proves her point, because then she has control over the village, because she's going to control everybody through fear. And she's taken away all the joy, all the whatever, because fear is a buzzkill, you know? And so there's so much oppression in that place and sadness. And then when he brings Kip back, there's this shift. It's like, hang on a minute. If Kip is alive, then hope is still alive. And for them, that boy meant that they could live by hope and they could have joy and celebration, and that there was good in humans because the humans rescued him. And so I would say that's like this whole meaning of Christmas, right? That Jesus came and rescued us through his own death. And here we had, you know, humanity up to that point had such a harsh, wrong view of God. And there was this, the law had come in, and then the Pharisees and just people in general, the enemy was through mankind ruling us through fear. And there's this fear manipulation, and we have to do these things and live under the law. And there was this yoke of slavery, and it was all about being good enough to earn your salvation and different kinds of things. And then Jesus came and was like, that's not the Father. Like the old, and Jesus's whole thing was saying, yeah, you've believed this about God, but this is the truth. You have misunderstood the heart of the Father. And so he keeps repainting things in a different perspective. And then he died and resurrected, so he could bring all the Kips back, so to speak, all the captives, rescue them and bring them back. So now that fear and manipulation do not have to rule over our lives anymore. We don't have to live in that place. And instead, joy and celebration and hope can be brought back and reestablished on the earth. And so I just thought in that way, like, I loved the kind of Christ figure that Christmas is, that he's risking his life, and his Father also giving his life for this boy, this elf, to be restored to his people, and how that act of sacrifice and service, that proving himself to be good and true and faithful to them, gave them hope and like reset their understanding of mankind. And granted, not all of mankind was good. He stood in that gap, you know, for us. But I think it's really a beautiful picture of what Christ did on the cross. So I think that gives you plenty to think about, and I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, and I have a tendency to struggle to get these out concisely. So it is what it is. But hopefully this gives you some ideas and some ways to kind of have some richer conversations with your kids after you watch that movie, because it had so much opportunity. For great conversations with your kids, and ways to understand Christmas better, ways to understand who Jesus is, the hope that he brings, the sacrifice that he did, and how it helps change our mindset and brings joy back into the world. What it was like to live in fear and slavery before Jesus came. So anyways, there you go. Thanks.